Now that we have started Spooky Month, if you're interested in something else that's spooky, why don't you take a look at the games we'll be talking about today. Hello, everybody, and thank you all for joining us in here today on Hudson County for another TTRPG Talk. This video series takes a look at tabletop role-playing games and related materials, world-building suggestions, and game design. Today we're not going to be looking at one game, but rather two, and that's because both of them are a part of the TTRPG Halloween Spooktacular 2023. This is a bundle organized by Cat Elm that basically puts together, this has been happening every year for the last several years, and it puts together a number of different games and adventures and other TTRPG materials that will help meet your spooky adventuring needs as you go into the month of October. So obviously, as that implies, all of these are either games or adventures or other TTRPG materials that are either horror or actually have a direct connection to Halloween itself. I do want to go ahead and mention right now, before I go any further, that I was actually asked to create this video by Kat McDonald of Peach Garden Games, who was the person who created Underfoot, and they actually sent me a free copy of the game. So this is a printout, right? It's only PDF. It's PDF only. It's right there. But anyway, they did send it to me, so this is a sponsor video. I will label it as such, but I just wanted to make that clear right off the bat. So, yes, you can obviously get this on itch. It will be available until, I'm assuming, December 31st. It says it has 23 days, and today's the 8th, so yeah, that would be the 31st. So the first of the games that we'll be talking about today is Vamp Camp, The Ways That We Feel Alive. This is by Sebastian Yue, and was originally created for the BIPOC Vamp Jam. The basic idea behind this is that you and your friends are basically playing this is a more story, discussion-driven game. Much of the materials included do have rules, but a lot of it's prompts and rolling tables to kind of really get your character started and get play moving. And the basic idea behind this is that this is a GM-less game. You are playing with two to six of your friends, and you are essentially responding to prompts as if you were newborn vampires at this camp that is basically designed as a support group for your local vampires, to try to help you cope with the concepts and ideas of obviously being a vampire. One of the things that I really like about this is that it definitely contains certain elements that basically introduce more variety into your vampires, in part by embracing the variety that already exists in humanity, that of course those vampires have been created from, which is definitely a good touch that was definitely included in this game, and was of course one of the primary goals that Sebastian Yue had when they created this game, since obviously a lot of traditional vampires of course have a very Eurocentric, or at least white appearance and outlook and associations. Sebastian did include rules that would potentially allow you to play it with a facilitator. It really is designed to be a GM-less game. So in some ways, it even seems to feel more like that support group. Not only it continues to embody that support group where, again, the players are the group, are the vampires who are the group. Yeah, that was a weird way of explaining it, but I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to express here, is that it really feels to me like the design of the game is really embodying the basic concepts that the story is trying to tell. Because you have a group of people around a table or fire pit or whatever, essentially playing out the game the same way. The same way that they would be playing out the situation would be kind of playing out with the vampires actually in the camp. And I really like that about certain games like this. As I mentioned, though, the other game we're going to be talking about is Underfoot. Underfoot is by Cat McDonald of Peach Garden Games. Unlike our previous game, which was kind of GM-less, this is a game that's designed to be used with a GM. And it is for 2 to 4 players. So 2 to 4 players plus the game master. And in this game, essentially, all of the players are playing servants or assistants for a wizard named Demetrius the Great. Now, Demetrius the Great has many, many things that he has to do, and because it's Halloween. And he's the primary court magician in this kingdom. But he's also like a total jerk to you. And a lot of the people around him basically worship the ground he walks on because, of course, they don't interact with Demetrius every day, and therefore they don't see the true personality that hides behind the magician, the magic trick. And so basically, you can't super directly oppose him. However, you and your companions are going to try to do your best to basically muck up all of Demetrius's plans. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this game. So you basically, in this game, you have 4 different characters that you can potentially play. We have an imp, 5 different characters that you can potentially play. We have the imp, which has certain special abilities associated basically with their hellish origin, their netherworld origin. We have the treasure, which is an item or basically an intelligent thing that has been created by Demetrius in order to charm people. We have the familiar, which of course is your typical, magically summoned or enchanted animal. We have the elemental, which is basically, again, a sort of a primal elemental that's been summoned or created out of the primal elements to do work for Demetrius. And then finally, we have the homunculus, which of course is, a being created out of flesh. That's kind of flesh and blood, basically, that's been put together. In this case, it's specifically Demetrius's own flesh and blood. So in some ways, you're like his kid, which is a little weird, but okay. Anyway, each of these not only gives you certain special abilities. So, for example, here, the homunculus, whenever something bad happens to them, then Demetrius actually loses part of his magical energy. And then each character actually has different events that they add to the calendar of the day. So you'll see here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different slots that are open. And basically you're trying to muck up all of the stuff that happens during the day in an attempt to create basically a large series of disasters in order to completely mess up the grand summoning that's going to be happening at the end of the day. There are certain things that basically your characters can't do. Like, your characters can't necessarily directly oppose Demetrius, or else Demetrius will just use the bond of ensorcelment he has on your characters basically to stop you, right? Or he can potentially, of course, use different magical spells in order to try to counteract whatever it is that you're doing. However, he can only use spells he can only has a certain number of spells, and he can only really use them once. And of course, he only has a certain amount of energy that he can spend in order to try to fix what you're breaking. But he starts off with only so much, and he gains some whenever he goes to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So he starts off with some at breakfast, and then gains some more at lunch, and then gains some more at dinner. But of course, that's a pool that will be slowly depleting. As I mentioned, each of the characters gets a chance to add one event to the event calendar of the day. So here we have a good event here for the elemental that I will go over real quick just to kind of explain exactly how these events work. So each of the events has a disaster goal. Basically, you're trying to reach that goal. If you reach that goal, it creates a disaster for Demetrius that he needs to try to solve. And each of them has opportunities for creating chaos. Each player also has a limited number of actions that they can do. In this case, each player can do 2 things each in order to try to cause problems. For Demetrius, because of course you're too busy running around doing lots of things that Demetrius wants you to do, you're throwing these extra things in or messing some things up in order to basically make Demetrius burn all of his energy before he can cast that spell at the end of the day. So for example, this has extra opportunities, like because the character who's visiting in this A Visit from Apollonia the Wise, Apollonia really doesn't like Demetrius, so she's fully willing to actually kind of help you out a little bit by basically increasing the amount of chaos being caused. Demetrius has to spend extra points because he's already not happy about the fact that Apollonia is here. Apollonia has her own familiar that will also help you. And then, of course, it says that it also can potentially create problems for Demetrius. Apollonia can at the Great Summoning, which is, of course, that event at the end of the game. One thing to add that will kind of help explain what I just mentioned earlier about disaster scores is that when you're creating your character, aside from the special ability that you gain because of whatever type of servant you are, and also the item and the event that you can add to the calendar is you also get basically there are 6 stats: earth, wind, fire, water, light, and dark. So whenever you're attempting to, and each of these applies to certain things that you could do basically to cause chaos or to mess with Demetrius's plans. You assign a score to each of these, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or to 4 of them, right? And so whenever you use it, whenever you decide to take an action and you use it, you don't actually have to roll. Instead, what you're doing is you're taking your stat score and you're just adding it to the disaster for the overall scene in order to try to create, again, the appropriate amount of chaos necessary in order to disrupt things. So, for example, if you decide, I'm going to try to disrupt the Grand Summoning by hiding an important item that Demetrius needs to use, and I say my Earth score is the 3, then I would add 3 to the disaster score for the event. One other interesting quirk about this game is that each of those 6 stats is opposed by another stat. So we have light opposing dark, fire opposing water, earth opposing wind. Whenever your character decides to use one of those and then has another stat in opposition, then actually you're required to roll a d6, and then you might potentially end up using the paradox stat instead of the one you actually intended on using. So that's an interesting kind of quirk that can potentially influence your decisions and where you put your stats. You need to think about not only what types of actions those stats apply to, but also like this possibility that if you do attempt to roll it, you might end up using the opposite number if you have one there. Obviously, if you didn't put anything into one of those stats, then you don't really need to worry about this. So That was Underfoot and Vamp Camp. So remember, if you do want to check out these games, you can take a look at the TTRPG Halloween Spooktacular 2023 bundle on itch. It will be available until the end of October, or of course you can just go ahead and take a look at these games individually. I would definitely recommend it, and I think they are worth it. So thank you all for joining us again today. Don't forget to rate your itch purchases, and have a good zone. If you would like to show your support for this channel or for the Hessens County blog, in the description down below you will find links to the channel coffee and also the itch store. Please feel free to take a look, and thank you for your support.